Welcome to a short play and explain video on the stakes PLO50. We played a little bit before starting with this video. We are about, 1,000 big blinds deep here, 200 here. And on the bottom left, we're only 100 big blinds deep, so should open some dynamics here against the fun player. And with the aces, easy 4-bet, of course. Not that deep. When you're 200 big blinds deep, effective, it gets a little bit different. I actually 3-bet folds here, which is surprising. Some 3-bet folds, which, for a fun player, sometimes it's not going to be the case. Folding on the top right with the deuce, and the disconnected double suited hand from under the gun. You want to be tight in that position. It's not going to be worth it playing too much. And here against 3 players, queens and 8s don't do really much. You don't really have nut outs, which you really want to have in a 4-way situation like that. Here's the rundown. Just going to call. Remember, don't 3-bet these hands unless they're double suited. Doesn't make too much sense. Here, just because of the suited ace, you don't want to call, especially against a 13% range by, a regular. You're not going to do yourself a favor peeling 3-way there. Even when you do have to flop flush draw, it's not going to be a great outcome sometimes, because you need sometimes more equity than just a nut flush draw to have, a very profitable situation. And once it doesn't happen, you're always going to have a not so profitable situation. Here I like to check back to top right with the flopped boat. I certainly can go for a bet as well, which I now do on a turn. But when you do have, the jack block, usually you want to bet your kings because you can get a lot of value from a jack over 3 streets. But when you have your jack yourself and a king, it's hard to get value over 3 streets. So therefore, checking back and protecting that check back range a little bit is definitely what you want to do sometimes. Also, they might level themselves and then, relentlessly check raise you on turns where they think you just have aces in the gutter or something. And then they might go for it with a bunch of hands that you have, drawing dead. Gonna flat here with a 7, 7, 8, 9. Good enough hand for sure against a loose under the gun range. And being in position for the rest of the hand. Would have got shot in a 7 set draw. I'm definitely gonna continue here. I think both raising and calling could be fine. And yeah, he's not gonna fold the wheel. The purpose of the bet is basically to make non-wheels fold, pair over pairs. This is what you're targeting. Gonna go for a half pot bet here. Set up a triple barrel. Here I think we do have to continue with the 10, 9, 8, 8. But I'm gonna do fold the turn here. All in with the aces and a less than SPR1 on this texture for sure. He unfortunately does have the flush draw, which is always the main call. Worth noting that he decides to 3-bet that hand for sure. Usually hasn't shown up with these hands. so far. Going to check and then bet this turn card. It's actually fairly... I mean, I actually gonna bet, and it's not very clear to me whether it's a bluff or whatever, but sometimes, I mean, you're not gonna get check raised that much because you have the jacks. You're basically semi-bluffing with equity to go with it. Unfortunately, he had the bottom set, which, you know, did very well against. I had 4 outs of both. I had flush outs, 9 of them, and then I had some straight outs, so how bad can he get? Not really that bad, in my opinion. So yeah, I like the bet instead of just trying to randomly bluff catch rivers. And definitely making some decent equity hands fold there. Here I could see a check raise being good as well because of the board texture. You know, he's gonna have a lot of overpairs to check back on the flop, and I think almost all the higher kickers with the 4 should be a bet. Sure, you could have some ace-3, but then you can just bet fold, basically. Here, this is a check. Actually, yeah. Against a somewhat tight cutoff open, the board doesn't connect very well with them, and I don't expect many check raises, especially when you have more 9x in your range. Well, on turn, just trying to go to showdown. Now this 10, he should not really, you know, be able to value bet aces anymore, right? So that's not really the issue. And we can just show it down. He does even have an 8-9 and doesn't go for value, you know. Which in the end, you know, my bet on the flop was somewhat effective. He had an open-ended straight draw and some potential dangerous cards for him, like the king on the turn. Only one in the deck. Here 9s and 4s, so I'm going to call the raise. Also worth to say that he has a very wide opening range in general, somewhat crazy. But even against him, just having the 9s there doesn't do anything on the flop. Marginal cutoff open here, but this is going to be a hand I want to play. Unfortunately, I mean, we're gonna have to get this check through. You know, with a lot of equity, all in all. And this river, I'm going to check it over to my opponent, who didn't improve. With just a king, no spades in my hand, I'm gonna check back and then call this turn. I think pot size river bet is in order. Don't want to really give a straight too cheap of a check call. And yeah, this is what your nut flushes wanna bet as well, in case he wants to station and become very stubborn on that river. You're gonna have a bunch of bluffs, so you gotta be careful that, you know, you're not gonna overbluff. But the thing is, if I had aces without anything to go with it, for example, ace, ace, deuce, 5 with just the ace of hearts, I would not float the turn on the on this king, jack, 10, 4. So for that reason, it's not going to be, I'm not going to end up with naked ace, ace of hearts all that often. Trying to pick this pot up here on the turn. I think he could be so passive that he actually is not c-betting that many flush draws, so I'm not having a value bet here on the river. And some opponents that are just all betting their flush draws, you might even want to value bet the king jack. But it really depends. I think once people limp, they show some passiveness before the flop that transitions to flops. And for that reason, you want to also not value bet too thinly on rivers because they show up with surprisingly strong hands. Also against balanced opponents, I think it's not a value bet. Margin will open here, button is tight, big blind is unknown. And I'm usually watching out for these positions and what they do. Also, it is important that you add these cold calls up from MP and their 3-betting ranges. And once you get through them fairly often, by the way, their call calls, obviously, when they're in MP and cutoff, are not going to be as high as their overall call calls. But you can have an estimate for how often, actually this would have been a defend here on the small blind. It's no big deal, because whenever you cold call the small blind with these hands, your win rates are not going to be astronomical. So folding is never going to be that much worse than cold calling, since you're not 3-betting and you're not denying that much equity to your opponent. Here, big one versus under the gun 3-bet, he's super tight. So my 3-betting range will be very, very strong, but unfortunately a little bit too much lean towards aces. Gonna have probably just the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and the 8, 9, 10 jack double suited type of hands here. But having the aces in an open-ender, it's actually a fairly okay hand. And whether to check call, check raise all in is a close decision, but I'm going to go for the second option, the check raise all in. Unfortunately, it works this time. Now the reason for this play is that my equity, I mean, I do have equity against almost all of his hands, except for the 8-9, of course. And it just denies a lot of equity to some of the hands he could check back on turns to see all cards. Gonna be checking back the kings and just an 8 and fold on this turn card, even though I have the king of spades. If I had just a gut shot to go with it, I would call. Also, I mean, I think this is gonna be a close fold. Don't really care about the small blind weak double suited hand there. Just go on to the next hand. And crazy Finn 3-bets us. I'm gonna go with a flop here. Generally speaking, this hand against a wide 3-bet range plays really well. Just want to go for either flush draw or, you know, strong pair, which doesn't happen on this board. So basically what happens in that spot is if he does have aces, we're gonna flop less. If he doesn't, the hand works against him. Whatever he is gonna have, I'm gonna make my hand more often because of blockers, meaning top pair, top kicker in a low SPR pot, which would be quite okay against the wide 3-betting range. Against the min raise, I'm gonna have to call the king high suit, especially against the button. And here I have somewhat interesting of a decision. If he's balanced here, I think I could not fold. Have given an 8. It was actually repping some, you know, marginal 2-pair hands. So I'm gonna call. Ends up having the 8-6. Now the reason for calling there is that sometimes people even use those 10s and kind of weird big blind hands and, you know, bluff them small for some reason. I've seen that quite a bunch, and given that I have to be right 1 in 5 times, I think this hand is just okay for a call. Also, I do have top pair blocker, which is better than aces, basically. Kind of call here on the bottom left. And on the top left either. Queens against jacks, but going to showdown, not winning it. Can't do much. And here I'm gonna fold. Here I'm gonna play for a min raise or just fold now. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like if you did and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more in the future. Let me know also if you have any suggestions for the format in the comment section below.